Did you know that eviction can cost landlords thousands of dollars and countless hours of stress? It's a nightmare scenario that keeps many property owners awake at night. As a seasoned landlord, I've seen my fair share of tenant issues, but nothing could have prepared me for the ordeal I'm about to recount. This is the story of my worst tenant ever, a cautionary tale that highlights the importance of careful tenant screening and proactive property management. This story begins, like many others, with a seemingly normal applicant. He walked into our office with a confident smile, dressed neatly, and spoke politely. Everything about him seemed to check out. He passed our initial screening process with flying colors. His application was spotless, and his background check came back clean. He had a steady job at a reputable company, decent credit that showed he was financially responsible, and he provided glowing references from previous landlords. We were eager to fill the vacancy in our rental property, a charming 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. The house had been on the market for a while, and we were relieved to finally find someone who seemed like the perfect tenant. Little did we know that this tenant would soon turn our lives upside down, transforming our investment property into a source of constant worry and financial drain. The nightmare began slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. From the moment he moved in, things felt off. There was an air of tension that we couldn't quite put our finger on. He seemed to be in a hurry, almost as if he was hiding something. There was an unsettling air about him, a lack of respect for the property that set off alarm bells in my mind. The once pristine living room quickly became cluttered and messy. We started noticing small damages here and there. However, we tried to remain optimistic, hoping that our initial impressions were wrong. We thought maybe he was just going through a rough patch and things would improve. Unfortunately, our hopes were quickly dashed as his true colors began to show. He became increasingly difficult to deal with, often arguing with us over minor issues. The once polite and respectful tenant turned into a source of constant frustration. He started hosting loud parties that disturbed the peace of the neighborhood. Complaints from neighbors began to pour in, and we even had the police show up at the house on multiple occasions. Each time we inspected the property, we found more damages. Broken windows, holes in the walls, and a yard that looked like it hadn't been cared for in months. The financial strain was becoming unbearable. We sought legal advice and decided to file an eviction notice, but even that process was fraught with challenges. The tenant refused to leave, dragging out the eviction process and causing us even more stress and financial burden. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we managed to get him out. The house was in shambles and we were left to pick up the pieces. It was a hard lesson learned, one that we won't soon forget. The first red flag appeared when the rent was late, just 1 month into the lease. It was a small delay, but it set the tone for what was to come. The tenant handed over the check with a sheepish smile, and we hoped it was just a one-time oversight. He offered a sob story about unexpected medical bills, promising to catch up soon. His tale was heart-wrenching, and we couldn't help but feel sympathy for his plight. We wanted to believe him, to give him the benefit of the doubt. We empathized with his situation and granted him a grace period. It seemed like the right thing to do, a gesture of goodwill. We shook hands, hoping this would be the end of the issue. However, this became a recurring theme, with excuses piling up alongside the unpaid rent. Each month brought a new story, a new reason why he couldn't pay on time. The stress began to mount as the unpaid bills accumulated. Then came the complaints from neighbors. They were fed up with the constant disturbances and their patience was wearing thin. The once quiet building was now a source of frustration for everyone. Loud music at all hours, trash overflowing from bins, and the general disarray of the apartment were becoming impossible to ignore. The tenant's lifestyle was affecting the entire community. And then there were the suspicious characters coming and going at odd times. It was unsettling to see strangers loitering in the hallways, and it raised concerns about safety and security. Our once peaceful property was becoming a nuisance, and we were bombarded with calls and emails from frustrated residents. The complaints were relentless, and it was clear that something had to be done. We tried to address these issues with the tenant, but our concerns were met with denial and hostility. He refused to acknowledge the problems, insisting that everything was fine. The situation was spiraling out of control, and we were running out of options. Ultimately, we had no choice but to take legal action. Consulting with our lawyer, we prepared an eviction notice. It was a difficult decision, but necessary to restore peace and order to our property. The writing was on the wall, and it was time to act. The tenant packed up and left, and as the moving truck pulled away, we felt a sense of relief. It was a hard lesson learned, but we were determined to move forward and ensure this never happened again. As months went by, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The tenant stopped communicating altogether, ignoring our calls and emails. Rent payments became non-existent, and the property fell into disrepair. We discovered that he had stopped paying utility bills, resulting in disconnections and threats of service shutoffs. Our attempts to reason with him were futile. He became increasingly aggressive and evasive, making it clear that he had no intention of honoring the lease agreement. We realized that we were dealing with a professional tenant, someone who knew how to exploit the system and take advantage of landlords. Section 5. The breaking point eviction became the only option. The final straw came when we received notice from the city about multiple code violations. It was a moment of sheer disbelief and frustration. We had tried to be patient and understanding landlords, but this was beyond anything we could have imagined. It turned out that the tenant had been running an illegal business from our property, storing hazardous materials and causing significant damage. The property, once a cozy home, had been transformed into a hazardous zone. The walls were stained, the floors were damaged, and the entire place reeked of chemicals. We were facing hefty fines. The city had no leniency for such violations, and the financial burden was mounting. Each day that passed without action meant more penalties and a deeper hole in our pockets, and potential legal action if we didn't act swiftly. The legal ramifications were daunting. We were not just looking at fines, but also the possibility of being sued for negligence. The stress was overwhelming. Eviction was our only option, a decision we did not take lightly. It was a costly and time-consuming process that we had hoped to avoid. We'd always believed in giving people a chance, but this situation left us with no other choice. A costly and time-consuming process that we had hoped to avoid. The financial strain was immense. We had to calculate every expense from legal fees to repair costs, and it was clear that this would not be a quick fix. We consulted with an attorney and initiated legal proceedings, bracing ourselves for a lengthy and stressful battle. The attorney explained the eviction process in detail, and we knew it would be a tough road ahead, bracing ourselves for a lengthy and stressful battle. The nights were sleepless, filled with worry and anxiety. We spent countless hours discussing our legal strategy, hoping for a resolution but preparing for the worst. The tenant, unsurprisingly, fought the eviction every step of the way, using every delay tactic in the book. They argued, they refused to leave, and they sought legal counsel to counter our every move, using every delay tactic in the book. It was a grueling process, filled with court dates, paperwork, and endless negotiations. Each step forward felt like 2 steps back, but we were determined to see it through. Section 6. The aftermath. Picking up the pieces and rebuilding. After months of legal wrangling, we finally regained possession of our property. What we found inside was heartbreaking. The house was in shambles, trashed beyond recognition. Walls were damaged, appliances were missing, and the stench of neglect permeated the air. It was a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of renting to the wrong person. The financial toll was significant. We had lost months of rent, incurred legal fees, and faced a mountain of repairs to make the property habitable again. It was a harsh lesson in the importance of protecting ourselves as landlords and recognizing the warning signs of problematic tenants. Section 7. Lessons learned the hard way. Wisdom earned through struggle. This experience, though painful, taught us valuable lessons that we carry with us to this day. We realized the importance of thorough tenant screening, going beyond credit checks and employment verification. We learned to trust our instincts and pay attention to red flags, no matter how small they may seem. Moreover, we adopted a more proactive approach to property management, implementing stricter lease agreements, conducting regular inspections, and maintaining open communication with tenants. We vowed to never again let our guard down or underestimate the potential risks involved in being a landlord. Section 8. Share your story. Join the conversation. Let's help each other. Have you ever dealt with a nightmare tenant? What lessons did you learn from your experience? Share your story in the comments below and let's learn from each other's mistakes. Remember, knowledge is power, and by sharing our experiences, we can help each other navigate the challenges of being a landlord and avoid costly pitfalls. Don't forget to check out our other blog posts and resources for more tips on tenant screening, property management, and real estate investing. We're here to help you succeed in your journey as a landlord.